My name is Emily, and until 8 weeks ago, I truly believed I had the perfect marriage with Liam Turner. We had been together for 7 years, married for 4, and I genuinely thought we were building something beautiful together. How naive I was. The warning signs had been there for months, but I kept blaming everything on work stress. Liam worked as a financial advisor at his father's firm, Turner and Associates, while I ran my own successful marketing consultancy from our home office. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden attention to his appearance. I should have connected the dots sooner. It wasn't until I accidentally saw a text notification on his phone while he was in the shower that everything finally made sense. See you tomorrow night. Can't wait to finally meet your family. P says you've told them we're just friends for now. The message was from someone named Lily. My blood ran cold when I realized that P meant Helen, his mother. Helen Turner had never liked me. From the moment Liam brought me home to meet his family, she made it clear I wasn't good enough for her precious son. She had always wanted him to marry Chelsea Morrison, the daughter of another wealthy family in their circle. When Liam chose me instead, a middle-class girl who worked her way through college and built her own business, Helen never forgave it, not him and not me. But I never imagined she would go so far as to orchestrate an affair. Over the next 8 weeks, I became a detective in my own marriage. I hired a private investigator named Jason Lee, who confirmed my worst fears. Liam had been seeing Lily Harris for 3 months. She was a 25-year-old real estate agent who had recently moved to town. And according to Jason's findings, Helen had introduced them at a charity gala I had missed because of a client emergency. The photos Jason showed me were devastating. Liam and Lily at restaurants I had never been to, holding hands while walking through the park where he proposed to me, kissing in the parking lot of the gym where we had a joint membership. But the most infuriating part was discovering that Helen was actively encouraging the relationship, even hosting dinner parties where Lily played the role of Liam's girlfriend while I was supposedly away on business trips that didn't even exist. As heartbroken as I was, I am also incredibly practical. Instead of confronting Liam immediately, I started planning. My father taught me chess when I was 7, and his favorite saying was, "Never make a move until you can see the whole board." It was time to study the board very carefully. First, I reviewed every legal document related to our marriage and our assets. When we got engaged, my lawyer had insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Liam had been offended at first, but I explained that as a business owner, I needed to protect my company and my personal assets. The prenup was ironclad. What was mine remained mine, and what was his remained his. More importantly, the house we lived in, the beautiful 4-bedroom colonial that Helen always loved to brag about, had been purchased entirely with my money and remained solely in my name. Next, I documented everything. Every business expense Liam had charged to our joint account, every client dinner that was actually a date with Lily, every lie he told me about where he had been. I kept our joint accounts active, but I started monitoring every transaction in real time through banking apps, taking screenshots of everything. I created a detailed spreadsheet that would have made any accountant proud. Then I started making strategic moves. I quietly opened new personal accounts and began redirecting my business income there, while leaving just enough in our joint accounts to avoid suspicion. I scheduled a meeting with my divorce attorney, Sophia Diaz, who had handled my business contracts for years. I updated my will and all my insurance policies. I even had the locks changed at my downtown office, the space I had been considering moving my business into full-time. But most importantly, I planned the perfect reveal. Helen had always insisted on hosting elaborate holiday celebrations. Thanksgiving had already been uncomfortable, with Liam acting distant, and Helen making pointed comments about young couples growing apart and finding happiness in unexpected places. But Christmas was her crown jewel event, a formal dinner party for 30 of their closest friends and family. When Helen called to confirm our attendance, her voice was dripping with fake sweetness. "Oh, Emily, darling, I hope you don't mind, but I've invited a lovely young woman named Lily to join us. She's new in town and doesn't have family nearby. You know how I hate for anyone to be alone during the holidays." I could hear the smugness in her voice, the barely contained excitement. She thought she was cornering me, forcing me to sit there and watch my husband's mistress play house at their family celebration. What she didn't realize was that she had just given me the perfect stage for my own performance. The week before Christmas, I went shopping, not for gifts, but for the perfect outfit for the dinner. I chose a stunning red dress that Liam had always loved, paired with the diamond jewelry he had given me for our anniversary. I wanted to look absolutely radiant when their world came crashing down. I also made one final preparation. I called my brother Jack and my best friend Olivia, asking them to be on standby. I didn't tell them everything, but I hinted that I might need support after Christmas dinner. Both of them promised to keep their phones close. Christmas Day arrived, crisp and clear. Liam was unusually attentive that morning, bringing me coffee in bed and commenting on how beautiful I looked. I wondered if his conscience was bothering him, or if Helen had coached him to be extra sweet before they blindsided me with their little surprise. We arrived at the Turner family estate at exactly 6:30. The house was decorated like something out of a magazine, with twinkling lights and perfect garland draped over every surface. Helen greeted us at the door, wearing a navy blue dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Emily, darling, you look lovely," she said, kissing my cheek with all the warmth of a snake. Come in, come in. Everyone's dying to see you both." The living room was filled with the usual people. Liam's father, George, his sister Rachel and her husband Chris, various aunts, uncles, and cousins, and several family friends I had known for years. But sitting prominently on the sofa next to Helen's usual spot was a young woman I had never seen in person, though I had studied enough surveillance photos to recognize her immediately. Lily Harris was exactly what I expected. Tall, blonde, and polished to perfection. She wore a cream-colored dress that was clearly expensive, but appropriately modest for a family dinner. When she saw Liam, her face lit up in a way that might have been heartbreaking if I hadn't already been prepared for it. "Liam," Helen called out brightly, "come meet Lily. I've told her so much about you." I watched my husband's performance with reluctant admiration. He managed to look surprised and pleased at the same time while shaking Lily's hand, holding it just a fraction longer than necessary. "Lily, what a pleasure. Mom mentioned you were new in town." "Yes. I moved here from Boston about 8 months ago," Lily replied, her voice warm and friendly. "Your mother has been so welcoming. She's told me wonderful things about the whole family." I stood there smiling, playing the role of the devoted wife while my marriage quietly fell apart in front of me. Several people tried to include me in the conversation, but I could feel the undercurrent in the room. Helen's closest friends, the women who had always treated me with polite distance, were watching me with barely hidden anticipation. Dinner was called at 8, and Helen had clearly orchestrated the seating arrangement. Liam was placed directly across from Lily while I was pushed to the far end of the table between his elderly Uncle Jack and his cousin's wife Karen, who had always been kind to me. The conversation moved through topics I had heard 1,000 times before. George's latest golf tournament, Rachel's children's achievements, the family's upcoming vacation to the Bahamas. But I could feel the tension building as Helen kept steering the conversation back to Lily, praising her career, her education, her background. "Lily graduated from Harvard Business School," Helen announced during the salad course. "Just like our Liam. They have so much in common." "How interesting," I replied calmly, meeting Lily's eyes across the table. Business school must have been quite an experience. I went straight from undergraduate into starting my own company, so I sometimes wonder what I might have missed. Lily smiled politely. "There's nothing wrong with learning through experience. Mom mentioned you run a marketing firm." "That's right. We specialize in crisis management and reputation recovery. It's fascinating how quickly a solid reputation can be destroyed and how much effort it takes to rebuild trust once it's broken." Liam shifted slightly in his seat, but Helen continued. "Lily works in real estate," she said proudly. "She's already one of the top agents in her firm." "Real estate is such a relationship-driven business," I observed. "Trust is everything, isn't it? Clients need to know their agent truly has their best interests at heart, not some hidden agenda." The conversation continued into the main course, with Helen becoming increasingly bold in her praise of Lily and increasingly pointed in her remarks about young people finding their true paths and life taking unexpected turns. During the beef Wellington course, I noticed Lily stealing glances at Liam when she thought no one was paying attention. There was genuine affection in her eyes, which almost made me feel sorry for her. She had no idea she was being used as a piece in Helen's game just as much as I was. "Lily, tell us about your family," Helen prompted, clearly steering the conversation exactly where she wanted it to go. "I understand your father is in finance as well." "Yes, he's a portfolio manager in Boston," Lily replied, unconsciously straightening her posture. "He actually went to Harvard Business School too, about 20 years before Liam did." "How wonderful," Helen exclaimed, as if this was the most delightful coincidence in the world. "Liam, didn't you say you were thinking about expanding the firm's investment services?" Liam nodded, playing his role perfectly. "We've been considering it. It would be helpful to have someone with that kind of background on the team." I watched the performance with growing fascination. They had clearly planned this conversation, probably rehearsed it more than once. Helen was methodically building Lily's image, her credentials, her connections, her potential value to the Turner family business. It felt less like dinner conversation and more like a job interview disguised as small talk. "And Lily, you mentioned you're originally from Connecticut?" George asked, seemingly unaware of what his wife was doing. "That's right, Greenwich. My family has a place on the water there. Nothing too extravagant, just a small cottage we've had for generations." I nearly choked on my wine. A small cottage in Greenwich that had been in the family for generations probably cost more than most people's homes. Helen's eyes lit up with satisfaction. She had found herself the perfect daughter-in-law. Money, status, and pedigree. "How lovely," I said smoothly. "Greenwich is beautiful. Liam and I actually looked at properties there when we first got married, but we decided we preferred being closer to the city for work." It was a subtle reminder that Liam and I had built a life together, made decisions together, but I could see Helen already dismissing it, filing it away as evidence of my practicality, my supposed lack of romance. "Emily has always been very focused on convenience over beauty," Helen said with a tight smile. "It's admirable, really, how dedicated she is to her work." The backhanded compliment lingered in the air. Several people around the table shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the tone, even if they didn't fully understand the intention behind it. "I've always believed that loving what you do makes you better in every other part of your life," I replied evenly. "When you feel fulfilled professionally, you have more energy and enthusiasm to bring into your personal relationships." Lily smiled genuinely at that. "I completely agree. I love real estate because I get to help people find their dream homes. There's something really special about matching the right person with the right property." "How do you decide what makes a property right for someone?" Liam asked, and I could hear the flirtation in his voice, even if no one else at the table seemed to notice. "Well," Lily said, warming to the subject, "you have to really listen to what people are saying and also what they're not saying. Sometimes they think they want one thing, but what they actually need is something completely different." The irony was almost unbearable. Lily was unknowingly describing exactly what Helen had done to her, convinced her she wanted Liam, when what she really needed was to run as far away from this family as possible. "That sounds like a very useful skill," Rachel commented. "I imagine you have to be quite perceptive when it comes to people's motivations." "You do," Lily agreed. "Unfortunately, not everyone is honest about what they want or what their situation really is. I've had clients lie about their budget, their timeline, even their relationship status. It makes everything much more complicated." Liam went completely still at that comment, and I noticed Helen's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. Lily had just unknowingly described her own situation perfectly. She was being lied to about Liam's relationship status, about his intentions, about everything that actually mattered. "Honesty is incredibly important in any relationship," I said, looking directly at Lily, "professional or personal. Once trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild." "Absolutely," Lily said earnestly. "I always tell my clients that we can work through almost anything as long as we're honest with each other from the beginning." The The conversation was starting to feel surreal. Lily kept making statements that undermined her own position without realizing it, while Liam grew more and more uncomfortable, and Helen worked harder to steer things back to safer territory. "Lily, you must tell us about that beautiful property you sold last month," Helen interrupted quickly. "The one with the incredible gardens." But before Lily could respond, Uncle Jack, who had been quietly making his way through his third glass of wine, spoke up. "You know, this whole conversation reminds me of when I was working in real estate years ago. I had this client once who was married, but told everyone he was single. Caused quite a mess when the truth came out." The table went quiet. The only sound was the faint clinking of silverware against plates. Jack, completely unaware of the tension, continued. "Thought he was being clever, keeping his wife in the dark while he was looking for a love nest with his girlfriend. But the girlfriend found out about the wife. The wife found out about the girlfriend. And in the end, both women ended up taking everything from him in the divorce." Helen cleared her throat sharply. "Perhaps we should change the subject." "Oh, it turned out quite well in the end," Jack went on cheerfully. "The wife got everything she deserved. The girlfriend realized she had dodged a bullet, and both of them were much happier without him. Funny how things work out sometimes." I lifted my glass slightly in his direction. "To justice," I said quietly, just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. Lily looked increasingly uncomfortable now, though I wasn't sure she fully understood why. Liam, on the other hand, looked like he wanted to disappear completely. "Well," Helen said brightly, clearly trying to regain control of the situation. "Shall we move on to dessert? I made my famous chocolate torte." As Helen moved around the table serving dessert, I caught Karen's eye. She leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "Are you okay? You seem a little tense tonight." I gave her a small smile. "I'm fine, just taking everything in." Karen studied my face for a moment, then glanced around the table. I could see the realization slowly forming in her expression as she took in Helen's obvious setup, Liam's discomfort, and Lily's innocent presence in the middle of it all. "Oh my," she murmured quietly. "I've got it handled." I whispered back. She reached under the table and squeezed my hand, and I felt a brief surge of gratitude. Not everyone here was part of Helen's plan. The chocolate torte was admittedly incredible. Helen might have been manipulative, but she was also an excellent cook. I found myself savoring each bite, knowing it would likely be the last time I would ever eat her food. "This is amazing, Mrs. Turner," Lily said with genuine enthusiasm. "Would you ever share the recipe?" Helen smiled, that same tight, controlled smile. "Oh, it's a family recipe. I only share it with family members." The implication was obvious. Once Lily took my place, she would be worthy of the recipe. It was such a small, petty move, but it perfectly captured everything about Helen. "That's a shame," I said lightly. "I've been asking for that recipe for 8 years. I suppose I never quite made it into the inner circle." The comment was soft enough to pass as humor, but sharp enough to make several people uncomfortable. Rachel looked embarrassed. George frowned slightly at his wife. Even Lily seemed to sense something was off. "Emily, you know that's not," Helen began. I lifted my hand gently. "It's fine, I understand. Some things are reserved for blood relatives and future daughters-in-law." I put just enough emphasis on future for it to land. Lily frowned slightly, clearly confused, glancing between Helen and me, as if trying to understand why a simple recipe had suddenly turned into something more. And in that moment, watching her confusion, watching Helen's quiet satisfaction, everything became completely clear. Helen wasn't just trying to humiliate me. She was using Lily to do it. And Lily had no idea. She thought she was at a normal family dinner, being welcomed, making connections. She had no idea she was being used as a weapon. That realization settled something inside me. When Helen made her move, I would make sure Lily understood everything. Not to hurt her, but to free her. It happened during dessert. Helen lifted her glass, her voice bright and confident. "This is Lily," she said proudly, gesturing toward her. "She will be perfect for Liam once the divorce is finalized." The words dropped into the room like a bomb. Every conversation stopped instantly. Utensils froze midair. Someone actually gasped. Even George looked completely stunned, as if he hadn't been informed of this part of the plan. But I was ready. I calmly picked up my knife and continued buttering my roll, taking my time, making sure every movement was steady. Then I looked up and smiled. "How nice," I said sweetly, turning toward Lily. "Did they also mention that the house Liam and I live in is in my name? And that there's a prenup protecting every major asset?" Liam went completely still. His glass stopped halfway to his lips. The color drained from his face as the realization hit him all at once. Lily's expression shifted instantly. Confusion, uncertainty, something starting to crack. But I wasn't finished. "I'm curious, Lily," I continued, my tone calm, almost conversational. "When exactly did your relationship with Liam begin? Was it before or after the charity gala in June where Helen introduced you?" The color drained from her face. "I don't understand what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," I said evenly. "I'm stating facts." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. "I know that you've been seeing my husband for 3 months. I know about the dinners, the dates, the places you've been together. Marcelo's, 7 times, if I'm not mistaken. They have excellent security cameras, by the way." Silence. "I know about the business trips I was supposedly on, the ones that never actually existed, the ones that gave you 2 time to play house while Helen hosted her little dinners." Helen's mouth opened, then closed. "Emily, I don't know what you think you know." "What I know," I interrupted calmly, "is that I hired a private investigator, and he's very thorough." I tapped the folder lightly. "Would you like to see the photos?" No one spoke. The silence in the room was suffocating. The silence stretched so long it felt like the entire room had stopped breathing. Liam finally spoke. "Emily, please, let's not do this here." "Why not here?" I asked calmly. "This is exactly where your mother chose to humiliate me. This is where she thought she could introduce my replacement and expect me to sit quietly." I stood up slowly, smoothing my dress. "For those of you who are wondering," I said, addressing the table, "yes, Liam has been having an affair. Yes, Helen knew about it. And yes, they've been planning to replace me with Lily." I turned to Lily, who looked like she could barely process what was happening. "The house you've been promised?" I said gently. "I bought it. It's in my name. And the prenup makes sure it stays that way." Her voice shook. "He told me you were already separated." "He lied," I said simply. Liam stood up abruptly. "That's enough." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "You don't get to lie to both of us and then decide when the truth stops." I turned back to Lily. "Did he also tell you about the joint account he used to pay for your dates?" I asked. "The one I've been tracking? Or that those business trips were never real?" Lily's face crumbled. "You said you were sleeping in the guest room." "He said a lot of things," I replied. Helen's voice cut in sharply. "How dare you come into my home and create this kind of scene?" "You created this," I said quietly. The room fell silent again. "I tried to be part of this family for 7 years," I continued. "I tried to make it work, but instead of being honest, you chose this." I glanced toward Lily. "You used her, just like you tried to use me." Lily shook her head, stepping away. "I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know." "I believe you," I said. Then I looked at Liam. "If he could lie to me for months," I said softly, "what do you think he would eventually do to you?" That was the moment everything shifted. Lily stepped back from him completely. "For anyone wondering what happens next," I said, turning back to the table, "the divorce papers are already prepared. They'll be filed tomorrow." No one interrupted me. "I built my life," I continued. "My business, my home, everything I have is mine, and it will stay that way." I picked up my bag and folder. "I won't be staying here tonight, and Liam will need to find somewhere else to live." I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Lily's voice. "I'm done," she said. "I'm not doing this." I didn't turn back. I didn't need to. The next morning, my phone rang at 7. It was Lily. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling," she said quietly. "I got your number from his phone." "It's fine," I replied. "What do you need?" I ended it. She said, "Last night, after you left, I couldn't stay with someone who could lie like that." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "I thought I loved him," she continued, "but now I just feel stupid." "You're not," I said. "You were lied to." She hesitated. "Helen called me after I got home. She was furious. She said I ruined everything, that I was just like you, too independent." I let out a quiet breath. "That sounds like her." "The thing is," Lily said slowly, "I realized something. She didn't care about him. Or me. She just wanted to win." She always does, I replied. We talked for a while after that, about everything, about what had happened, about how easily people can be manipulated when they trust the wrong person. The divorce itself was straightforward, exactly as my attorney had predicted. Liam didn't fight anything. The house stayed mine, my business stayed mine. Everything I had built stayed exactly where it belonged. A few months later, I ran into Rachel at a store. She looked uncomfortable at first, but I smiled. "I'm sorry," she said, "about everything." I had no idea. "I know," I replied. "How's Liam?" I asked. She sighed. "He moved back in with our parents. He's not doing great." "And Helen?" Rachel gave a short, humorless laugh. "She's telling people her version of the story. Most don't believe her." "And Lily? She left town," Rachel said. "But before she did, she told people the truth." Good. Months later, Liam showed up at my office. He looked tired, older, holding flowers he didn't deserve to bring. "I just wanted to apologize," he said. I listened. He told me everything, that he had been insecure, that he had let his mother manipulate him, that he had destroyed the best thing in his life. When he finished, I just looked at him. "Why?" I asked. He swallowed. "Because I was weak." We sat in silence for a moment. "I would have supported you," I said finally. "I know," he whispered. "What do you want from me now?" "Nothing," he said. "Just for you to know I understand what I lost." I nodded. "Then you got what you came for," I said. He left shortly after that. And that was the end of it. A year later, my life looked completely different. I had moved my business fully into my downtown office. I was doing better than ever, and I was seeing someone new, someone who didn't feel threatened by my success, someone who respected me. One night, over dinner, he asked me something. "Do you ever regret how you handled it?" I thought about it. "No," I said finally. "She chose to humiliate me publicly. I just made sure the truth was seen publicly too." He smiled. "Fair enough." I raised my glass slightly. "To knowing your worth," I said. And this time, I meant it.